I was fired 7 minutes into the new vice president's first board meeting. "Let me stop you right there," she said, cutting clean through my sentence. Her voice was calm, practiced. "This presentation isn't necessary." I looked up from my laptop. 14 people sat around the table. Board members, legal counsel, senior leadership. All of them froze. "I'm sorry," I said. She didn't hesitate. "You're fired. Security will escort you out." The words landed flat, like she'd rehearsed them. No warning, no performance review, no private conversation, just a public ending. Someone inhaled sharply. Another board member shifted in their seat. No one spoke. I glanced down at the bouquet resting beside my chair. White lilies. Simple. I had picked them up that morning on the way in. "They're for you," I said, nodding toward the flowers. The new vice president blinked. "Excuse me." "Welcome gift," I added. "First day." Her jaw tightened. "This isn't appropriate." "Neither is this," I said. Gesturing to the room, she folded her arms. "Security." 2 guards stepped into the doorway. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting. "My name is Sarah Whitmore. I have worked at this company for 9 years. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I closed my laptop slowly and stood. "Before I go," I said, meeting her eyes, "check your email. The board will meet in 2 hours. A flicker crossed her face. Annoyance, confusion. "That won't be necessary," she replied. "This decision is final." I smiled. Just enough to make her uncomfortable. "You can fire me," I said, "just not today." The room went quiet again. Not awkward quiet, alert quiet. I picked up my bag. The guards hesitated, unsure whether to move closer or step back. No one told them what to do. As I walked out, I heard the board chair clear his throat. "Hold on," he said. "What email?" I didn't stop. "The story you are about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. While the characters, events, and company in this narrative are fictional, the situations are inspired by real workplace conflicts involving power, integrity, and accountability. Each story carries its own message and resolution." I reached the hallway before my phone vibrated. One notification, then another. I didn't read them yet. Some things are better understood once everyone has the same information. Why did everyone assume I would apologize instead of prepare? I heard it in their voices long before that meeting, the tone people use when they think you'll smooth things over. "Sarah, you're always so reasonable," Ed had said the week before, leaning against my doorframe. "You'll help her settle in. I help problems settle," I replied. "Not people." He laughed, like I was joking. I wasn't. I was never a climber. I didn't chase titles or linger after meetings to make sure my face was remembered. I didn't play politics because I didn't need to. When the system broke, they called me. When clients threatened to walk, they sent me in. When something was quietly on fire, I put it out and went back to my desk. That was my role, invisible until necessary. "Sarah, can you take a look at this, Sarah? Something's off in operations." "Sarah, legal needs context before they escalate." I gave it to them, every time. During our last product delay, when 3 contracts were on the line, the chief financial officer had called me at 9 at night. "If this goes wrong," he said, "we lose more than money." "How much?" I asked. "About $200 million over 3 years. "Then stop guessing," I said. "Send me the terms." I didn't save the company with speeches. I did it with clauses, timestamps, and process. With knowing when something could move and when it couldn't. That's why she misread me. In her mind, I was compliant, useful, quiet. Someone who would absorb pressure and say thank you for the privilege. She leaned on that assumption the moment we met. "I expect flexibility," she'd said in our first private conversation. "No resistance. I expect documentation," I replied. "No ambiguity." Her smile tightened. People like her hear that as defiance. People like me hear it as survival. By the time she decided to remove me, she wasn't eliminating a problem. She was clearing away something she didn't understand. And that misunderstanding was already working in my favor. What if the real mistake happened before she even walked into the building? The email arrived 2 weeks before her start date. No greeting, no introduction. "Send me a clean overview of the numbers," she wrote. "I want to make the transition look strong." I replied the same afternoon. "I can send the current projections," I said. "They'll reflect our actual timelines and recognition rules." Her answer came 10 minutes later. I'm not asking for inaccuracies, she wrote. Just smooth the presentation. Move a few things forward. Delay a few expenses. Optics matter. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. I called her instead. I want to be clear, I said when she picked up. Our revenue recognition policies don't allow that. She exhaled, sharp and impatient. Sarah, everyone does this. I need the board confident on day one. Then confidence has to come from facts, I said. Not rearranged ones. Silence. Then a softer voice. I'm trying to help you, she said. You don't want to start on the wrong side of me. I'm already on the right side, I replied. Of the rules. She hung up without saying goodbye. An hour later, another email arrived. Send the revised version by Friday. I answered in writing, carefully, professionally. I can't do that. Any adjustments would need audit review and board approval. I didn't add anything else. No explanation, no apology. I forwarded the exchange to my personal archive and tagged it with the date. Not as a threat, not as leverage, as a record. At the time, I didn't think it would matter. I assumed she'd drop it, learn the culture, adapt. People always underestimate how much damage one email can do when it's written too early and read too late. By the time she decided I was a problem, the fault line was already there, quiet, documented, waiting. And she had no idea she'd stepped on it herself. Disagreement didn't turn into disloyalty all at once. It happened the moment she closed the door. She didn't sit behind the desk. She leaned against it, arms crossed, already impatient. I've reviewed your materials, she said. And I'm concerned. I stayed standing. About what? Exactly your posture, she replied. You push back. You question direction. I clarify scope, I said. That's my job. She smiled. But it didn't reach her eyes. I need alignment, Sarah. Then put it in writing, I said. So we're aligned on record. The smile disappeared. This doesn't need to be formal, she said. We're having a conversation. Conversations get forgotten, I replied. Documents don't, she straightened. You're making this difficult. I'm making it clear. She stepped closer. I was hired to change how things work here. That includes you. Then outline the changes, I said. And the authority behind them. Her jaw tightened. You don't trust me. I trust process. She laughed once, sharp. That's the problem. You hide behind it. I rely on it, I said. Because it protects the company. She turned away, pacing once before stopping. Let me be direct. Are you with me, or are you in my way? I didn't answer immediately. If you're asking whether I'll follow lawful direction, I said, yes. And if I'm asking whether you'll stop resisting, she pressed. I'm not resisting, I said. I'm documenting. She stared at me, calculating. Then her tone softened, dangerously. Let's not make this adversarial, she said. Send me what I asked for. We'll keep it between us. Send the request in writing, I said again, with legal copied. Her face hardened. That won't be necessary, she said. Then neither will my compliance. Silence stretched between us, heavy, final. When I left her office, she didn't call after me. She didn't need to. I could feel the shift already. The moment tension turned into intent. From that point on, I stopped being an obstacle to manage. I became something to remove. It wasn't the firing that proved intent. It was everything she did before it. The first message came to my team early Monday morning, not through me, not through human resources. Effective immediately, it read. All project approvals route directly to my office. Maya, one of my senior managers, walked in holding her phone like it was evidence. She copied everyone except you, Maya said. Is this real? It's not valid, I said. Forward it to me. An hour later, another message followed, this one sharper. If timelines slip, accountability will be reassessed. The vice president wrote. Non-compliance will have consequences. Maya swallowed. That sounds like a threat. It is. I said. She hesitated. Do you want me to respond? No, I said. Save it. By noon. 2 more directives went out. Budget reassignments, staffing changes, all bypassing protocol, all bypassing me, Jonah, a project lead, called from a conference room. I put him on speaker. She told me to remove 2 analysts. He said, no documentation, no review. What did you say? I asked. I asked for approval from human resources. He said, she said. If you need permission to lead, you shouldn't be leading. Did you write that down? I asked. Yes, he said. Word for word. Email it to yourself. I said, Then send it to me. There was a pause. Is this going to blow back on us? It already has. I said, we're just making sure it's visible. Maya leaned forward. She's trying to isolate you. I know, I said, and she's doing it fast. That's how you know she's afraid, I replied. Another message arrived while we sat there. Short, public. Sarah is no longer the point of escalation. I didn't respond. I opened a folder on my desktop and dropped each message inside. Dates, times, names. Maya watched quietly. What do we do now? I looked up. We keep everything. From that moment on, the pattern wasn't just behavior, it was evidence. Power overplayed itself the moment she chose an audience. The board meeting resumed like nothing had happened. I was standing again, my laptop open. The same slide frozen on the screen. Continue, the chair said. I didn't get a sentence out. I'm going to stop this, the vice president said, turning toward the room. This role requires decisiveness, and what I'm seeing is obstruction. I closed my laptop. Sarah Whitmore, she said, louder now. You are terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. A murmur rippled across the table. Not agreement, hesitation. On what grounds? Asked Thomas. The board chair. Performance, she said. Cultural misalignment. Do you have documentation? He asked. She smiled. Thin? I don't need it. The general counsel, a woman named Elaine, who rarely spoke first, set her pen down. You do, actually. The vice president turned. Excuse me. Termination of a senior director requires either documented cause or board approval, Elaine said. Neither has occurred. I was hired to lead, the vice president snapped. I won't be undermined. You're being questioned, Thomas said. Not undermined. She looked at me. Say something, she said. Defend yourself. I met her gaze. I don't need to. Her eyes narrowed. This ends now. No, I said. It escalates. She laughed. You're already out. You can fire me, I said evenly. Just not today. The room went still. Elaine leaned forward. Sarah, are you indicating there's information the board should review before any action is taken? Yes, I said. It's already been sent. The vice president's confidence wavered for the first time. What did you send? Thomas checked his phone, then looked up. Elaine's expression changed as she scanned her screen. We need to pause this meeting. This is absurd, the vice president said. Security? Not yet, Thomas replied. Everyone stay seated. I picked up my bag. As I stepped away from the table, no one followed me. The guards remained where they were, unsure. Behind me, Elaine said quietly. We're moving into review. I didn't turn around. Whatever today meant, it had already begun. The email was already drafted. I had written it the night after her first message to my team, then left it unsent. I opened my laptop and checked the recipients one last time, the board, legal counsel, and the audit committee. No assistants, no intermediaries. The subject line was plain documentation for immediate review. Elaine's voice echoed in my head from earlier. If there's anything relevant, it needs to be shared now. I clicked send. My phone vibrated almost immediately. Thomas texted first, received, then Elaine, reviewing, do not delete anything. I stood in the hallway outside the boardroom, my bag still on my shoulder, through the glass. I could see the vice president pacing. Her phone pressed to her ear. Elaine stepped out and motioned me closer. Walk me through it, she said quietly. Pre-start pressure to adjust numbers, I said. Written refusal. Multiple directives issued without human resources. Threats made to staff. All documented. Any recordings, she asked. One. I said I was a participant. She nodded once. That helps. Inside the room. The vice president raised her voice. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see the shape of panic. She was no longer addressing the board. She was trying to regain control. Elaine went back in. The door closed. A minute later, Thomas came out. We're suspending the meeting, he said. Stay nearby. I'm not going anywhere, I replied. Elaine reopened the door and addressed the room. Until further notice. All personnel decisions are paused. The vice president turned sharply. You can't do that. Elaine met her stare. We already have. I checked my email again. 3 more replies had arrived. Short, direct, serious. The system had shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just enough to make sure no one could pretend this was still under her control. Power looks loud when it's unsure of itself. Real authority doesn't announce anything. I walked past the reception desk without stopping. My badge scanned green. No alarm, no pause. The guard glanced up. "Everything okay?" "Sarah, yes," I said. "I'm stepping out." He nodded and looked back at his screen. Behind me, voices rose in the conference room. Not a debate, a scramble. The vice president's tone had changed sharper, faster, trying to regain ground that was already gone. Elaine caught up to me near the elevators. "Stay reachable," she said. "Don't forward anything. Don't delete anything." "I won't," I replied. She hesitated. "This may take a while." "I know," I said. "I'll be close." As the doors opened, I heard the vice president through the glass. "This is outrageous," she said. "I was hired to make decisions." Elaine's reply was even. "You were hired to follow process." The doors closed. Outside, my phone buzzed again. A message from Maya. They told us to pause all changes. Everything. I typed back one line. Good. I didn't rush. I didn't look back. No one followed me into the lobby. No escort. No raised voices calling my name. Across the street, I stopped and checked my email. Another message from Thomas. "Please remain available." I was inside the building. She was still explaining herself. Still arguing. Still assuming volume could reverse what documentation had already set in motion. I took a breath and stepped into the afternoon. The quiet felt earned. By the time I reached the corner, my badge still worked. My job still existed. And the only person waiting under scrutiny wasn't me. Silence had done exactly what it was meant to do. Losing authority happens quietly, one permission at a time. The first call came that evening. Elaine's voice was measured, professional, effective immediately, she said. "All of her approvals are suspended. She's not to direct staff, access financial systems, or represent the company externally." "Understood," I replied. The next morning, interviews began. Maya went first. She called me afterward, her voice steady but tight. They asked for timelines. Exact words. I gave them everything. "That's all they need," I said. Jonah followed. Then 2 analysts. Then someone from finance I barely knew. No one was coached. No one was rushed. Elaine kept me updated in short, factual messages. Interview notes align. Documentation corroborates. No contradictions so far. By midday, the vice president was no longer in her office. Her calendar was wiped clean. Her assistant had been reassigned. Thomas called me just after lunch. "She's been informed." He said, informed of what I asked. "That she's relieved of decision-making authority pending outcome." He replied, "She's not to contact staff." I could hear her in the background then, faint but unmistakable. "This is procedural overreach," she said sharply. "I demand to address the board." Thomas didn't lower his voice. "You already did." In writing. There was a pause. The kind that lands when someone realizes argument won't move anything. "She keeps asking who initiated this," Thomas added. And I said. "And we keep telling her the same thing," he replied. The process did. By the end of the day, a single internal notice went out. No names, no explanations. All strategic decisions are temporarily centralized under board review. Nothing dramatic followed. No outbursts. No final confrontation. Just access removed. Meetings canceled. Authority dissolved into procedure. I closed my laptop and set it aside. The system didn't punish her loudly. It didn't need to. It simply stopped responding to her at all. Winning didn't look like applause. It looked like an email. Elaine forwarded it to me late in the afternoon. No preamble, no softening language. Following the conclusion of the investigation, the vice president has been terminated for cause. Effective immediately. That was it. One sentence. Clean. Final. Thomas called a few minutes later. "We'll issue a brief internal memo," he said. "No details. No spectacle." "That's fine," I replied. "You're reinstated," he added. "Full authority restored." I thanked him and ended the call. The memo went out before the day ended. It named no one. It explained nothing. It simply stated that leadership responsibilities were reassigned and operations would continue as usual. People stopped by my office quietly. Maya stood in the doorway, hands folded. "She's gone," she said. "Yes," I replied. She nodded, relief crossing her face. "I'm glad you stayed." "So am I," I said. "No one congratulated me. No one needed to." The work resumed, steady and familiar. Meetings returned to their normal rhythm. Decisions moved again, properly documented, properly reviewed. I didn't feel triumphant, I felt intact. That night, I packed the bouquet I'd never given and left it on the reception desk. White lilies, still fresh, no note attached. This wasn't revenge. Revenge needs witnesses. This was timing, restraint, and rules doing exactly what they were designed to do. Before I shut down my computer, I wrote one line in my notebook, something I wanted to remember long after this stopped feeling personal. When someone tries to force you to choose between your integrity and your job, choose your integrity and let the system carry the rest. Silence, used well, can be a form of strength. Documentation is not aggression. Waiting is not weakness. Power doesn't disappear when it's abused. It just moves to the person who knows how to wait. The moment the chief executive officer walked in, holding a court-authorized audit order, I knew this was not a meeting, it was a verdict. "This session is now in order," he said, not looking at me as he took his seat at the head of the table. "We're here to address the operational losses that have put this company at risk. I'm Regina Hale. I am 46 years old, and until that morning, I was the vice president of operations, the person who made sure everything worked while everyone else took credit for it." He nodded toward the screen. A financial report appeared. Lines of red numbers I had never signed off on. "These losses," he continued, tapping the table once, "fall under operations, which means they fall under you." "That report never came across my desk," I said calmly. His lawyer leaned in and whispered something meant to be private. It wasn't. This time, she'll learn responsibility. A few board members shifted in their chairs. No one spoke. I leaned forward. "You're presenting figures I did not approve, based on assumptions I was never informed of." The chief executive officer finally looked at me. "That's why we're conducting an audit," he said, "to determine how much liability you carry." "How much?" I repeated. "Yes," he replied. "Personal exposure." I looked down the table. Faces I had worked beside for years suddenly avoided my eyes. "Effective immediately," he said. "Your system access is suspended." I stood. "You're removing my authority without a vote." "This isn't disciplinary," he answered. "It's procedural." Security stepped forward. One of them held out his hand. I placed my badge on the table myself. Before the meeting moved on, I need to say this clearly. The story you are about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA, while inspired by real workplace dynamics and power struggles. All characters, companies, and events are fictional and meant to explore accountability, manipulation, and consequence. As I gathered my things, the chief executive officer added one last line, almost casually. "If the audit confirms the losses, we'll be discussing your equity position next." No one stopped him. No one stopped me either. As I walked out, knowing the numbers he showed were not mistakes, they were weapons. By the time I reached my car, my phone was already vibrating. The internal memo hit inboxes before I could start the engine. "Vice President of Operations under review for mismanagement. All decisions to be cleared through finance pending audit." I read it twice. No name in the subject line, no explanation, just enough language to make people nervous. By noon, the silence started doing the work for them. I called Marcus Levin, one of my senior operations managers. Why was the Midwest shipment paused? There was a pause on his end. Too long. "Finance asked us to hold," he said carefully. "They said it came from the top." "Since when does finance control logistics?" I asked. "I'm just following instructions." "Regina," who's another pause. "I don't think I should say." I hung up before he could apologize. An hour later, I tried Elena from procurement. "I need the vendor approvals I sent last week," I said. She exhaled. "They were rerouted." "To who accounting?" "Why they said your authority is suspended." I closed my eyes. By whom I didn't ask. That was the pattern. No one asked. No one argued. Silence became proof. My phone rang again. This time, it was external. "Regina." "It's Thomas Reed," the voice said. He'd been a client for over a decade. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Our finance team says last quarter's payment was deferred," he said. "They're telling us revenue recognition was delayed on your end." "That's not possible," I said. "I approved delivery and invoicing on schedule." "Well," he replied slowly, "the books say otherwise." I felt the shift then. Not confusion, not coincidence. Who told you that? I asked. Your accounting department, Thomas said. They said it came from executive review. Executive review, not operations, not me. I need you to listen carefully, I said. I did not authorize any delay. There was a beat of silence on his end. Then someone else did, he said. And they used your name. When the call ended, I sat there, hands still on the wheel, understanding something with cold clarity. They weren't waiting for the audit to find evidence. They were creating it. The losses were not mistakes. They were instructions. I didn't have system access anymore, but I didn't need it. At 46, you don't survive decades in operations without learning how to rebuild a picture from fragments. I opened old reports I had saved, timelines I remembered by heart, approvals I could still see in my head because I had argued over every one of them. I called Daniel Wu, a former controller who now worked outside the company. I need you to look at something hypothetical, I said. He didn't ask why. Talk. If expenses that belonged to corporate strategy suddenly appeared under operations, who would have authorized that move? He didn't hesitate. Only the chief executive officer or the chief financial officer. No one else has clearance. And if those expenses kept repeating under different descriptions, that's called laundering, he said quietly. On paper. I thanked him and hung up. By evening, the pattern was undeniable. Consulting fees I had never approved. Advisory retainers I had never seen. The same vendor name appeared again and again, spelled slightly differently each time. I searched the address. It led to a mailbox office. I made one more call. This time to an analyst I trusted from a previous merger. Can you pull corporate registrations on a firm called Northway Strategic? I asked. There was typing on the other end. Then silence. That company traces back to a private holding group, he said carefully. One tied to your chief executive officer. I closed my eyes, not from shock, but from confirmation. They moved the costs, I said. Buried them in operations. Yes, he replied. Which makes your division look like it's hemorrhaging, and justifies what comes next. He didn't ask what I meant. He already knew. When I hung up, I understood the design of it. Paper losses created urgency. Urgency justified intervention. Intervention gave them an excuse to declare mismanagement. And mismanagement gave them the right to strip my equity under the guise of protecting the company. They weren't trying to remove me from my role. They were trying to remove me from ownership. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't call anyone out. I saved every name, every date, every trail they thought I wouldn't follow. Because now I knew exactly what they were building, and exactly what they planned to take. The call came just after lunch. Regina, the chief executive officer, said, his tone almost kind. Come upstairs. We should talk. He didn't wait for an answer. When I walked into his office, he was already seated, jacket off, sleeves rolled, like this was a conversation between equals. A single folder sat on the desk between us. This audit, he began, leaning back, is going to be rough on you. I didn't respond. Once auditors start digging, he continued. They don't stop at numbers. They look at judgment, patterns, leadership decisions. He let the silence stretch. Careers don't always survive that kind of attention. I'm aware of how audits work, I said. He smiled faintly, as if I'd proven his point. Good. Then you understand why I want to minimize the damage. He slid the folder toward me. Inside was a term sheet. My name at the top. A buyout offer for my shares, valued far below what the company had last reported internally. This is a clean exit, he said. You walk away quietly. We frame it as a mutual decision. Your reputation stays intact. And if I don't, I asked. His expression didn't change. Then the audit runs its course, publicly. So this is about optics, I said. Not accuracy. This is about responsibility, he replied smoothly. You ran operations. The losses sit there. That's how it will read. I didn't authorize those numbers. He leaned forward. Regina, arguing that now only makes you look defensive. I closed the folder and pushed it back across the desk. I'm not selling my shares, I said. Not like this. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. Think carefully. I have, I said. If there's nothing to hide, a full independent audit won't hurt anyone. His jaw tightened. You're making this harder than it needs to be, he said. No, I replied. You are. For the first time, the patience dropped from his voice. Then we proceed, he said coldly. And you live with the outcome. I stood, so will you. I left the folder on his desk and walked out knowing one thing with certainty. If he needed me to decide quickly, it was because time was no longer on his side. The audit began the way the chief executive officer expected it to. The lead auditor introduced herself as Karen Mills and slid a stack of binders onto the table. We'll be reviewing the financial data provided by executive leadership, she said. If there's anything additional, we'll request it. The company's legal counsel didn't wait. Our priority is operational exposure, he said. That's where the risk is. Karen looked at him. We decide scope, not counsel. I stayed quiet. They walked through charts I recognized only because I knew what was missing. Deferred revenue, reclassified expenses, clean narratives built on selective data. Regina, the lawyer said finally. Turning toward me, do you want to explain these variances? I met his eyes. Everything I approved is documented. That wasn't an explanation, he pressed. It was an answer. Karen made a note. Hours passed. The auditors asked precise questions, not accusations, not assumptions, just questions that didn't fit the story they had been handed. At one point, Karen closed a binder and looked up. We'll need the operating contracts tied to these figures. The lawyer's pen stopped moving. Those aren't relevant to this review. They are, Karen replied calmly. If liability is being discussed. I spoke for the first time in nearly an hour. You have my authorization to review all contract appendices. The chief executive officer's head snapped toward me. That won't be necessary. It is, Karen said. Already writing it down. We'll need everything. Amendments, side letters, equity clauses. The lawyer leaned forward. Those documents were excluded for efficiency. Karen didn't look at him. Excluding them creates risk. Silence spread across the room. I'll have them sent, the chief executive officer said finally, his voice tight. Please do, Karen replied. Today. When the auditors stepped out to confer, the lawyer turned on me. You're complicating your own situation, he said. I kept my voice steady. I'm clarifying it. He scoffed. You think paperwork will save you? I thought of the clauses he hadn't read closely enough, the ones he'd never expected anyone else to see. I think accuracy matters, I said. When Karen returned, she held a single request form. We'll need those appendices immediately, she said. There are items here we weren't told about, for the first time since this began. The chief executive officer said nothing. They came back with my contract printed. Karen set it on the table between us. The pages already marked with yellow tabs. We reviewed the operating agreement you signed when you took the role, she said, including the appendices. The chief executive officer leaned back. That document doesn't change the financial outcome. Karen didn't look at him. She turned to me. Miss Hale? This clause here, did you draft it? No, I said. It was drafted by the company. She nodded. As we thought, she read aloud, slow and precise. Any financial reclassification, cost reassignment, or revenue delay executed outside operational authority voids personal liability assigned to the vice president of operations. The room went quiet. The lawyer cleared his throat. That language is standard. It isn't, Karen said. And it's very specific. She flipped another page. This section addresses forced divestment. If equity is removed or compelled under allegations later proven inaccurate, the company is required to execute a mandatory buyback at market valuation. The chief executive officer sat forward. That clause was never intended to apply here. It applies wherever it applies, Karen replied. Intent isn't relevant. I spoke carefully. That clause exists to prevent exactly what's happening now. The lawyer turned on me. You're interpreting this to suit yourself. Karen raised a hand. We interpret documents, not parties. She opened her laptop and projected a timeline. We cross-referenced email logs. Revenue delays were approved by executive leadership, not operations. She looked directly at the chief executive officer. Your authorization appears multiple times. And the chief financial officers, she added. His jaw tightened. Those were strategic decisions. They were accounting decisions, Karen said. And they contradict the narrative presented at the start of this audit. The lawyer leaned in. Where is this going? Karen closed her laptop. We need to escalate. To whom the chief executive officer asked. The vice chair, she said. Immediately. He stood. That's unnecessary. Karen met his eyes. It isn't optional. I watched the color drain from his face as she stepped out to make the call. No one spoke. The document they had planned to use against me lay open on the table, doing exactly what it was written to do. The vice chair joined the meeting remotely, his voice steady as it filled the room. "Let's proceed," he said. "I've reviewed the preliminary findings." The chief executive officer tried to take control immediately. "This is an internal matter that's being exaggerated." "Not anymore," Karen said, sliding a document forward. "This audit uncovered deliberate financial reclassification." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She outlined the sequence plainly. Costs shifted into operations without authorization. Revenue deliberately delayed. Internal emails approving those delays traced back to executive leadership. The lawyer interrupted. "You're implying intent." "I'm stating pattern," Karen replied. "And motive." The vice chair spoke again. "Explain the motive." Karen looked directly at him. "Paper losses created grounds to allege mismanagement. Those allegations triggered a forced equity event under Ms. Hale's contract. A buyout attempt followed within days." The room shifted. "That's not accurate," the chief executive officer said sharply. She was offered a fair exit. I spoke for the first time since the call began. It was not fair. It was timed. The vice chair cut in. "Mr. Dawson, you'll hold comments." The chief executive officer stared at the screen. "You're silencing me in my own company." "You lost the floor," the vice chair replied. "When the audit showed you misused it," Karen added one final detail. "The consulting firm receiving the reclassified expenses is connected to a holding group you control." Silence followed. Not confusion, recognition. "This board does not tolerate manufactured losses," the vice chair said, "nor attempts to coerce equity under false pretenses." The chief executive officer stood. "This is a mistake." "No," the vice chair said. "This is documentation." He paused. "Effective immediately. You are suspended from executive authority pending a full investigation." The lawyer reached for his phone. No one stopped him. The vice chair turned to me. "Ms. Hale, your role remains under review, but the allegations against you are no longer supported." I nodded once. The man who had walked into a meeting with a court order sat back down without a word. The audit had stripped him of the room and left something else in its place. They used the word vindication like it was a gift. The vice chair spoke first. "The board has reviewed the audit in full," he said. "There is no evidence of misconduct on your part." I waited. "Operations were profitable," he continued. "The losses were artificial," Karen added quietly. "Your approvals were consistent. The financial deviations occurred elsewhere." Someone on the board cleared his throat. "We're prepared to make a statement correcting the record," and I said, "and reinstate your authority." Another director said, "With expanded oversight, public acknowledgement, the company owes you that?" I looked at the faces on the screen, people who had stayed silent while my name was stripped of context, people who were now eager to restore it. "What would that look like?" I asked. "Your title restored immediately," the vice chair said. "A broader mandate. Compensation adjusted to reflect." "I know what it looks like," I said. "I'm asking what it costs." The room stilled. A director spoke carefully. "It restores balance. It restores appearances," I said. "Balance would have been stopping this sooner." No one argued. The vice chair leaned forward. "We understand your hesitation. Take time." "I don't need time," I said. "I need clarity." Karen met my eyes. She didn't speak, but she didn't need to. The contract sat between us, already doing its work. The vice chair nodded once. "Your equity remains intact. Any decision you make will be honored." "I appreciate that," I said. "I'm listening." He smiled, relieved. "Good." I closed my notebook. Listening doesn't mean staying. The meeting ended politely. Cordial voices, careful language, no apologies. As the screen went dark, I felt the weight lift, not because they had cleared me, but because I no longer needed them to. Vindication had arrived. It just hadn't asked me to stay. The call with legal was short. "I'm invoking the equity clause," I said. Section 14. Subsection 3. There was no argument, only the sound of papers shifting on the other end. "We'll need confirmation in writing," the company's counsel replied. "You already have it," I said. "It was delivered with the audit findings." A pause. "Understood." 2 days later, the vice chair joined one last meeting. "This triggers a mandatory buyback," he said. "At market valuation." "Yes," I said. As defined at the time, the allegations were made. He nodded. The figure is substantial. It should be, I replied. The contract was written to protect against bad faith. No one disputed that. Finance confirmed the numbers in writing. The amount reflected the company's actual worth, not the paper losses they had tried to pin on me. It was a hit they could feel, not because it was reckless, but because it was deserved. You're certain about this? A director asked. You could stay. Shape what comes next. I already did. I said. By leaving? Karen spoke up for the first time. The record will show you acted within your rights. I know, I said. That's why I'm calm. When the documents arrived for signature, I read them slowly, not for errors, for closure. The vice chair said quietly, You didn't take the easy path. I took the accurate one. I signed. The company countersigned. Ownership transferred. Final. Later. My assistant stopped by my office with a box. Anything you want me to forward? She asked. No, I said. Everything I need fits. I left without an announcement. No farewell email. No speech. They kept the company. I kept what they tried to take. The call came from compliance, not the board. We've opened a regulatory inquiry, the voice said. Financial manipulation, revenue timing, expense reclassification. I didn't ask who authorized it. I already knew. The board followed a day later. The vice chair spoke without ceremony. Leadership is being restructured, he said. Interim appointments are in place. The investigation will proceed independently. And him I asked. He's no longer authorized to speak for the company, the vice chair replied, on any matter. That was it? No victory lap. No apology tour. When I returned to collect the last document from my office, I crossed paths with the chief financial officer in the hallway. He stopped, lowered his voice. We thought it would hold, he said. What I asked. The narrative. It did, I said, until it met paper. He nodded once and stepped aside. I didn't hold a press conference. I didn't post a statement. The audit spoke in a language that didn't need me to translate it. Timelines, signatures, authorizations, consequences. Later that week, Karen sent a brief note. Your record is clean. The findings are final. I replied with 2 words. Thank you. On my last day, the vice chair offered a handshake. You could have burned this place down, he said. I didn't need to, I replied. It documented itself. I left the building the same way I'd walked in for years. No escort, no announcement. My reputation intact because it had never actually been damaged, only challenged. The audit was never my threat. It was his confession. He built it to corner me. He fed it numbers he thought no one would trace. He trusted that pressure would make me fold. It didn't. When power tries to erase you with paperwork, do not shout back. Preserve the truth, insist on process, and let the record do the work. You're terminated, effective tomorrow. The CEO said it the way someone announces a meeting running over schedule. Flat, efficient, final. I didn't react right away. My name is Madeline Harper. I'm 48 years old, and until that moment, I was the director of warehouse automation. I had been called into the room less than 10 minutes earlier, told it would be a quick alignment before the holidays. There's no performance issue, he added, sliding a single sheet of paper across the table. This is about cost optimization. Automation maturity, we're streamlining. I looked at the paper but didn't touch it, so that's it. He nodded. The company has outgrown the role. I almost laughed at that. Instead, I asked, You're doing this 2 days before Christmas. He didn't blink. Timing doesn't change the math. Human resources cleared her throat. Your benefits run through the end of the month. I finally met his eyes. You didn't review my last report. That won't be necessary, or he said. The systems run themselves now. That was when I understood how little he knew. I stood, picked up my bag, then paused. Until what time do I still have system access? The CEO leaned back in his chair, mildly amused. End of day. Why no reason, I said. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask to reconsider. I simply nodded, thanked Human Resources for her time, and walked out, behind me. I heard the CEO say, Make sure it gets everything before she leaves. He believed the power was in the room he still occupied. I already knew it wasn't. The story you're about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. While the events, characters, and organizations portrayed are fictional, The situations reflect real workplace dynamics, power imbalances, and moments of quiet reckoning that many people experience but rarely get to voice. I didn't go back to my desk. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I walked straight past the warehouse windows, where the robots moved in perfect coordination, responding to instructions they trusted without question. I kept walking. I didn't plan to walk through the warehouse. My feet just took me there. Evan Morales spotted me near the control rail. He was the afternoon floor supervisor, the kind of man who never raised his voice because he didn't have to. "They let you go?" he asked quietly. "Effective tomorrow," I said. He exhaled through his nose and watched the robots slide past us in clean lines. "That's bold." 500 units moved in synchronized patterns, lifting, sorting, routing, no collisions, no hesitation, just trust and instructions that never lied to them. Evan folded his arms. "You remember the outage 3 years back? The night shift meltdown?" "I remember," I said. He shook his head. 2 hours of nothing moving, orders stacking, drivers screaming on the radios. "They wanted to hard reset everything," I said. I told them no. "You told them the system needed escalation layers," Evan said. "Permissions, fail-safes, and time," I added. "They didn't want to give it." He glanced at the ceiling cameras, then back at me. "If these stop," he muttered, "we're dead in the water." I didn't answer. A junior engineer named Kyle approached, tablet clutched tight. "Madeline." "Is it true you're leaving tomorrow?" I said. Kyle swallowed. "Who do we go to if something?" Evan cut in sharply. "Not now." Kyle nodded and stepped back, eyes still on me. Evan lowered his voice. "They think this runs itself, don't they? They think stability is permanent," I said. He let out a dry laugh. "That's not how machines work. That's not how people work either," I said. My phone buzzed. A calendar notification: admin credentials expire at end of day. Automatic, unemotional, accurate. Evan watched my face change. "You okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "I just remembered something I forgot to forget." I took one last look at the floor. The robots didn't slow. They didn't know anything had changed yet. I turned away before they could. The next step wasn't in the warehouse. It was somewhere much quieter. The first time I realized he didn't respect the system. We were standing in the same conference room, weeks before he fired me. He had just taken over as CEO. New title, new confidence. He pointed at the dashboard on the screen like it was a finished painting. "Look at that," he said. "Perfect throughput. Minimal human involvement. That's what scalability looks like." I didn't sit down. "It looks that way because the escalation layers are doing their job." He waved a hand. "That's the over-engineering I'm talking about." "It's not over-engineering," I said. "It's containment." He turned to me then, smiling like he was explaining something simple to a child. "Madeline, the robots don't need babysitters. They need authorization," I said, "and limits." He laughed. "Not loud, controlled. They move boxes, they follow paths. They don't think." "No," I said. "They execute." Silence stretched. One of the board members cleared his throat. The CEO leaned back in his chair. "You built something impressive. I'll give you that. But we don't need all this ceremony around it anymore." "Ceremony," I repeated. "All these permissions," he said. "All these locks. We're past the fragile stage. We're past the fragile stage because of the locks." I said. "If you strip them out, the system doesn't fail loudly. It fails quietly." "That's a risk I'm willing to take," he said. I looked at him. "You won't be the one paying for it." His smile tightened. "That's not your concern." "It becomes my concern the moment something goes wrong," I said. "Because when it does, the system will behave exactly as it was designed to." "And who designed it?" he asked. "I did." He nodded slowly. "Then trust your work enough to let it run." I understood it then. He saw green lights and moving numbers. He saw output. He didn't see the permissions holding everything in place. He didn't see the keys. When the meeting ended, he clapped his hands once and said, "Good talk. Let's not slow progress with fear." I didn't argue after that. There was nothing left to explain. Some lessons only land when the system enforces them. I got the call from IT at 7:12 in the evening. "Madeline," said Nora Kim, the on-call security lead. Her voice was careful. "I just saw the termination notice. Are you still active tonight?" "Yes," I said. "Until end of day." There was a pause. "We're running routine credential audits. Do you want me to? No, I said. I'll handle my scope. Another pause. Then, quieter. Understood. I opened my laptop and logged in. The dashboard came up exactly as it always had. Clean, responsive, alive. I pulled up the access tree. Master admin tokens sat at the top, untouched, doing their quiet work. I didn't rush. I followed protocol line by line, the same way I had trained everyone else to do it. I revoked the master tokens. The system accepted the change without protest. I left the operational processes alone. Routing stayed live. Task queues remained intact. The robots would keep moving on cached instructions for a while. That was intentional. Stability mattered, even now. My phone buzzed again. A text from Nora: tokens revoked, logged. No alerts triggered. I typed back, "Thank you." I sat back and closed my eyes for a moment. There was no anger in it, no satisfaction, just a steady quiet. I whispered it, not for the system, but for myself. I didn't shut it down. I stepped away. Another message came in, this time from Evan on the floor. "Everything looks normal." "You good?" I replied. "For now." At 8:59, I logged out. At 9, my access expired automatically. I shut the laptop and let it sit on the table. Outside, someone laughed in the hallway. Somewhere nearby, music played too loud and off-key. I didn't feel like celebrating. I felt finished. Whatever happened next would happen without me touching a single thing. My phone started vibrating at 6:48 in the morning. I didn't answer the first call, or the second. The third one came through with a voicemail alert. It was Evan, Madeline, he said, trying to keep his voice level, failing. "We've got a problem." I sat up and waited for the fourth call. It came from an unfamiliar number. "This is Colton Reyes from IT, the man said, without introduction. "Are you aware the warehouse automation system is refusing commands? Refusing how I asked. All task queues stalled," he said. "Robots froze mid-cycle. The screens just flipped to an access notice." "Read it to me," I said. He hesitated. "Authorization required." I let that sit. In the background, I heard someone shouting. Then the line went quiet, and another voice took over. I recognized it immediately. "Why is my warehouse not moving?" the CEO demanded. "Good morning," I said. "This is not the time," he snapped. "Override whatever you did." "I didn't do anything this morning," I said. "What exactly are you trying to override the system?" he said. "The robots. They're standing still." "Then follow protocol," I said. There was muffled arguing on his end. A keyboard clattered. Someone cursed. "They've rebooted everything," Colton said, back on the line. "Multiple times. Nothing changes, because reboots don't grant permission," I said. The CEO cut back in. "This is ridiculous. There has to be a master switch." "There isn't," Colton said carefully. "There never was." "What do you mean there never was?" the CEO shouted. Colton said. "The system doesn't recognize commands without valid authorization tokens." Silence. Then the CEO spoke again. Slower now. "Who has them?" No one answered him. I looked at the clock on my nightstand. 7:12. On the warehouse floor, 500 robots waited exactly as they were designed to, still, obedient, and unresponsive to anyone who no longer had the right to speak to them. The call came at 7:34. I answered this time. "This is sabotage," the CEO said, skipping my name. His voice was sharp, practiced. "You altered the system after termination." "No," I said. "I followed design." "You revoked access," he snapped. "I revoked my access," I said. "The system revoked everyone else's." "That's the same thing," he said. "It isn't," I replied. "One is emotion, the other is architecture." He exhaled hard. "You can't do this. We'll pursue legal action." "For what?" I asked calmly. "Complying with security protocol you approved." There was a pause. Papers shuffled on his end. "You're no longer an employee," he said. "I was when the change was made." I said, "Check the timestamp." Another pause. Longer this time. "I need you to fix it," he said. The word "need" slipped out before he could stop it. "I can't," I said. "I don't work for you. You designed it," he shot back. "Yes," I said. "Which is why it behaves exactly as intended." His voice lowered. "We're bleeding money by the minute. I warned you about removing escalation controls," I said. "You called it over-engineering." "That was a discussion," he said. "It was a dismissal." I corrected. You laughed. Silence again, then quieter. If this goes to the board, it already has, I said. Audit logs don't disappear. What logs? He asked. Access revocation, failed authentication attempts, internal override requests. I named them slowly, all time-stamped, all traceable. I could hear someone whispering near him. A door closed. You planned this, he said. But the accusation lacked force now. I planned a system that didn't depend on goodwill. I said, that was my job. Another breath, slower, measured. What would it take to restore service? He asked. The shift was complete. Arrogance had given way to calculation. I don't discuss work matters without a contract, I said. He didn't argue. Send your board's counsel, I added. They'll understand the language. I ended the call before he could say anything else. The second call came less than 10 minutes after the first. I answered without greeting. We need to talk, the CEO said. His voice was lower now. Careful. This has gone far enough. Has it? I said. Trucks are idle, he continued. Orders are stuck. Clients are calling the board directly. I'm not surprised, I said. The system is doing what it was designed to do. He swallowed. I could hear it. Let's reset this. We can fix the misunderstanding. There isn't one, I said. We can make you whole. He said quickly. Back pay. A bonus. We'll title it retention. I don't work there, I said. Then consulting, he said. Temporary. Until we stabilize. Stabilize what? I asked. Your operations or your authority? He ignored that. Just tell me what you want. The word landed heavy. He had never asked me that before. I let the silence stretch, not to punish him, to let him hear the space where his certainty used to be. What I want, I said finally, is for you to stop calling me like I owe you something. You created this mess, he snapped, the old edge trying to come back. I designed a system, I said. You dismantled the safeguards. That part was your decision. Another voice cut in on his end. A man, older. Put it in writing, the voice said. Now. The CEO covered the receiver. Madeline, listen, we're willing to negotiate. I smiled, though he couldn't see it. I said the words exactly once. Calm, clear, complete. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Then I ended the call. I set my phone face down on the table and didn't touch it again. Whatever came next would not be decided over a phone line. I wasn't in the room, but I heard the recording later. The board insisted it be preserved exactly as it happened. Explain to us why the warehouse is down, the chair said. His voice was controlled. Already tired. Colton Reyes spoke first. The robots aren't malfunctioning. They're responding correctly. To what? Another board member asked. To the absence of valid authorization, Colton said. The core control layer rejected every command issued this morning. That shouldn't be possible, the CEO said sharply. We own the system. There was a pause. Then Colton answered, carefully, we own the interface, not the authorization layer. The room shifted. What does that mean? The chair asked. It means, Colton continued, the decision logic accepts instructions only from a validated admin token. That design was approved during the rollout. A woman on the board spoke next. Approved by whom? Colton didn't hesitate. By the executive team at the time, including the current CEO. Papers rustled, a screen changed. Here, Colton said. Design review minutes. 3 years ago. Authorization hierarchy? Fail-safes. Escalation rules. The CEO interrupted. Those were technical details. They were governance decisions, Colton replied. The chair leaned forward. So you were aware the system depended on a specific authorization structure? Yes, the CEO said. But it was stable. Stable because it was maintained, Colton said. By Madeline Harper. Silence followed. Not confusion. Recognition. Another board member spoke. You terminated the person responsible for the only credentials that could lawfully restore control. I didn't know, the CEO said. That is not a defense, the chair replied. That is the problem. Someone asked about damage. Numbers were read aloud. Missed shipments. Penalties. Client escalation. The chair closed his folder. This was not a technical failure. It was a leadership failure. The meeting ended with instructions, not apologies. By the time the recording stopped, the outcome had already been decided. The announcement went out just after noon. Effective immediately, the internal memo read, The chief executive officer has been relieved of duties due to failure to ensure continuity of critical systems. That was the language they chose. Clean, bloodless. I learned the rest from a call I didn't expect. Miss Harper. A man said, measured and formal. My name is Robert Klein. I represent the board. I assumed that. I said. We need to be clear about roles. He continued. You are not being contacted as an employee. I'm aware, I said. As of this morning, he said. The company has recorded losses tied to delayed fulfillment, contractual penalties, and emergency mitigation. How much? I asked. North of 7 figures. He said. Still being finalized. I let that sit. The board recognizes, he added, that the system responded as designed. By design I documented, I said. By approvals your executives signed. Yes, he said. Those approvals have been reviewed. There was a pause. Then, quieter. The CEO's termination is final. I didn't ask for that, I said. We know, he replied. This isn't about blame. It's about restoring operations. And you believe I'm the only one who can do that, I said. Correct, he said. And we intend to proceed accordingly. Then understand this, I said. I will not return as an employee. I won't report to an executive. And I won't accept responsibility without authority. Another pause, longer this time. What would authority look like to you, he asked. Direct reporting to the board, I said. Defined scope, written limits, and compensation that reflects operational risk. He didn't argue. We'll draft terms, he said. Today. After the call ended, I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel victory. I felt something steadier. They hadn't called to apologize. They had called because they finally understood who had been holding the system together and what it cost to ignore that. The board meeting started on time. Madeline Harper, the chair said. Thank you for joining us. I'm here as an independent consultant, I replied, not an employee. We understand, he said. That's reflected in the agreement. Their counsel slid the document forward. I read it once, then again. Board-level reporting, defined authority, clear limits on responsibility. Compensation aligned with operational risk. No vague language, no implied favors. This clause, I said, tapping the page, states any system changes require my written approval. That's correct, the counsel said, and this one, I added, confirms I'm not responsible for decisions made outside my scope. The chair nodded. We won't make that mistake again. I signed, authorization ready, Colton said over the speakerphone. Awaiting your command, I typed the credentials in myself. One action, clean, deliberate. Service restored, Colton said. Relief broke through his voice. On the warehouse floor, the robots resumed movement exactly where they had paused. No cheers, no applause. Just work continuing, the way it always should have. You won't be returning to your former role, the chair said, carefully. No, I said. That role doesn't exist anymore. He accepted that. After the meeting, my phone buzzed once. A message from the former CEO, no apology. Just a sentence, you didn't have to do this. I didn't reply. I didn't take the robots. I didn't shut anything down. I took responsibility back from people who treated it like an inconvenience. Before I closed my laptop, I wrote the lesson down for myself, the one this story earned and didn't borrow from any other. When your value is invisible to the people in power, it isn't because you lack worth. It's because you've been holding everything together so quietly, they forgot what happens without you. You can fire the architect. But if you don't own the keys, the building waits for her permission.